Okay, we are live. Hello, friends, enemies, poetry lovers, and haters alike. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees. And welcome to. It's a very exciting episode. This is the first episode kicking off a brand new Teacup for One movie marathon. So, if you're brand new to the channel, quick overview: movie marathon is something that I've started to do regularly here, where I have this thing where I really like structure, so I like watching a bunch of movies that are kind of related to one another. It's something I do in my free time anyway. So I thought, why not just make it a thing? Like get a bunch of movies together in a series and then have friends come on the channel to discuss them with me. So we started off the year with the Oscar movie marathon, where we watched our way through a bunch of Oscar nominated films, which was so much fun before award season. We just wrapped up the Peter Pan movie marathon, which was like, I like to say it was the ultimate spectrum of good versus not good child acting. So that was an experience that we shared in together, and I loved it, kind of. And now we are kicking off the Robin Williams movie marathon. So an entire month, actually slightly more, 5 weeks of Robin Williams films, which is kind of a follow-up to Hook. So really like 6 weeks of Robin Williams films, because everyone loves Robin Williams, one of the best actors of all time. Fight me if you disagree, but please don't. I'm fragile. So we have some fantastic people who are joining us for this evening, and our very first film that we will be discussing is Dead Poets Society. It is a classic. I saw it for the first time earlier this year. I rewatched it in advance of tonight. It's a movie that there is much to discuss about, so let's discuss it. So let's bring in our first guest for this evening. Who's it gonna be? We all know this is my favorite because I can see them, but they don't know who's gonna be first. It's Jeanette.
Hello.
Hello, Jeanette. Welcome.
Yes, it's good to be back.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. So are you excited for Robin Williams month?
I'm extremely excited for Robin Williams month. Potentially, of all the movie marathons, this is the one I'm the most excited for.
Brilliant. Oh, I'm so excited to just hear your thoughts on all of these movies. But for those who might not know, let us know, who are you? What does Jeanette do? Plug away.
I'm Jeanette. I'm TinkerJ787 on Instagram. Hey, Bobby. You can find me over there. You can find my trips to Disney. You can find a little bit about my Maryland life, and all of my theme park lovingness. Speaking of, I'm one of the new co-hosts on We Like Theme Parks, the YouTube show now, not just a podcast. And soon to be co-host of Dole Whip Darlings, both shows over on Disnerdy Network on YouTube and on Instagram.
A delightful. Follow all of the above. Follow TinkerJ787. Follow Disnerdy Network. Is Dole Whips going to have their own Instagram, or is that just under the Disnerdy umbrella?
Yes, I'm absolutely sure we will.
Okay,
and then,
good.
Of course, you can always find me here because I want to be here as much as I possibly can.
And I love having you here as much as we can. Also, I love your shirt. Oh my gosh.
Oh yes, let's also promote. You can go to the the Yip Chuck Instagram and find the link to the Spill the Tea and also many other fun and fanciful shirts.
Like this one.
Yes.
Is it me? Am I the drama? It's my William Shakespeare shirt for those people who fall in the middle of the Venn diagram. That is Shakespeare and RuPaul's Drag Race. This is the shirt for you. Normally, I would have it
one
linked.
Side of that Venn diagram.
We'll get you over to the other side, Jeanette. Eventually, Shakespeare movie month will happen. Yeah. You know you'll love it. It'll be fine. Okay. So yeah, who else do we have here? Oh, Eliza the cat is joining us. Eliza, always a pleasure. Love having you. And my dearly, I almost said dearly departed. No, my dearly beloved mother, Martha. Adore you. Thank you for joining, Mummy dear. All right, let's bring in our next guest for this evening. Who's it gonna be? It's Lauren, everyone, from Castles, Capes, and Clones.
I panicked you, didn't I?
Slightly, but I was like, I'm gonna vamp. I can vamp this.
I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, what time is it?
I saw you show up though in the waiting room. I was like, Lauren is here.
Yes.
Well.
Yes, I mean it.
Welcome back, Lauren. So happy to have you.
Yay.
So, for those who may not know Lauren, you know the drill. Tell us all about you. Tell us about Lauren. Tell us about Castles, Capes, and Clones.
Yes. First, I just want to say I'm so glad that Tink is joining us on the dark side of YouTube. And
finally.
Yay, I'm going to have to go and subscribe. I am with Castles, Capes, and Clones, where we discuss everything in the Disney universe. We do all kinds of things, from unboxings to Disney reviews and I have a segment. I was so like sick last week that I couldn't deal, and so I am releasing two from 0 to 60 episodes. That's where we talk about the films of Walt Disney Animation Studios. So this week it is the Jungle Book and the Aristocats. So the Jungle
Yeah.
Book came out today, and the Aristocats come out on Friday.
Oh, I love it. I
Um,
love some Aristocats.
Two
yeah.
birds.
So that's pretty much what's been going on in my world.
Brilliant. Well, like I said, so excited to have you, and it looks like our audience loves having you as well. Big hello from Lisa. Speaking of which, look, it's Lisa.
Yay!
Lisa, welcome.
there.
Also, Mandy, welcome. Thanks for coming and watching. There we go. So yes, Lisa, welcome. Same thing. Tell us, who are you? Who is Lisa? What does Lisa do?
Yeah, my name is Lisa Alves. I am a theater producer in Toronto, Canada, and I work for a company as a managing producer called Cahoots Theater. And I have two hamsters who you could follow on Instagram. If you look me up on Instagram, they have great content, if I do say so myself. But, yeah, we just announced our first show since pandemic time
Woo!
at Cahoots Theater.
Wow!
So,
Yay!
yeah, so for those who are in Toronto, we open our show Three Ordinary Men on June 14th at the Theater Center, and it is
Nice.
a sad show but dramatic show and really fun. Still, it's about the Freedom Summer in 1964. There's a terrible movie about it called Mississippi Burning. The play is much
Wow.
better, but it follows the activists who were supporting the population to grow of Black voters in the summer of that election. So we're really excited to share the story. It's a beautiful story, and it's my first show back from.
That's so exciting for so many reasons. Just
Very.
for you, just for theater, specifically in Canada and Toronto, just to have so much stuff happening and for a company to have its first show back. I'm so happy. I'm so excited for you. Woo!
You'll be getting an invite, Matt.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. That might be my first show back.
Ooh.
You haven't gone to
I
anything?
haven't gone to any. I mean, I was holding out for Cursed Child, and I do have my ticket, but like, I'll make your show my first show back. If I can make it work with the schedule, that would make me so happy. That'd be like the one thing better than Harry Potter. Well, there's a lot of stuff that's better than Harry Potter, but still. Woo! So excited. All right, let's check the comments here. Walking with the Woods. Hello, governor. It's all British friends. It's really late over there. Wow, thanks for staying up for us. What do we have here? Did Jeanette steal that Yip Chuck shirt from her daughter's win? The entire family has matching shirts. Well, not matching, but coordinated shirts.
Teacup for One shirts that will be making their debut in Magic Kingdom on our trip next week.
I cannot wait. I was telling Jeanette it's going to be the first time one of my shirts steps foot into a Disney park, and I could not be more excited. Brilliant. All right, and we have one final guest for this evening. I am so excited to welcome to the channel for the very first time. It's Jake's Disney Afternoon.
Hi,
Oh my
everybody.
How did I not know you were going to be on this?
You kept it a secret, Lauren.
Oh my God!
Also, you were
Yes.
napping all afternoon. So
I know, God.
Sure, we advertised Libby from Punzi's Palace, but Libby had a conflict. And then also I found out that Jake loves this movie. So like, even if Libby was here, I still would have invited Jake, and Jake was able to make it. So it all worked out, and we surprised Lauren. So many birds are dead.
I know.
Yay.
Love it. So Jake, welcome to the channel. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us. So if anyone has watched my videos before, Jake is the wonderful human who curated this cat box for me a couple weeks ago. I got this delightful
Yeah,
mug.
that was
But-
really cool.
Yeah, Jake, tell us more about you. What do you do? What is your channel? Who's Jake?
Who is Jake? That's my midlife crisis thesis right now. I am on YouTube and Instagram at Jake's Disney Afternoon. I do a lot of the same Disney content that a lot of folks do. I do, pins and swaps and all of that stuff. I specialize a lot in vintage Disney and kind of history. I love that stuff. I'm also a theater artist and a music and theater educator, so I do a little bit of that occasionally, and starting some chats about sort of educators and that kind of conversation. And what else? I took notes of what I do. I think that's all I do.
That's all. Just a teacher and a creator and a musician.
That's a teacher and a creator, and a pandemic and a midlife crisis. Cheers, friends.
He's already classing up our show. He's got
Cheers.
wine.
There we go.
That's-
Yeah.
I got to teach 35 sixth graders in the morning, so I got.
Oh my gosh.
You're
Yeah.
up.
You need something. Absolutely. My thing is pineapple and passion fruit lightly flavored soda water because they were on Diet Coke at the store. So there it is.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Well, so what's like such a wonderful segue? We have an educator. We're talking about a movie about an educator. Segue. So yeah, tonight, Dead Poet Society. I mean, normally with really nostalgic movies, I like to open by asking if like what this movie meant to people when they first discovered it versus now. But I feel like this is a movie just purely selfishly because I didn't watch it until this year that maybe not everyone saw when it first came out or like in the 90s. So whose first time watching this movie was this? I could have structured that better, but whatever.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I know I've seen parts of it, large parts of it before,
Mhm.
but this was my first time like watching it from beginning to end and actually like paying attention to it.
Cool.
So yes, I would say this was my first time watching it.
All right. And had everyone else seen it before prior to
Mhm.
this? Yes. All right. So then, actually, no, since Jeanette, you're kind of in the minority, let's start with you. Like just first impressions watching this movie with a clean slate, more or less. How was it?
So it was good. I didn't know what to expect. My husband kept talking about like, oh, there's just wait for the end. Just wait for the end. And so like
The most
I
rushed
certainly
third
did
act
have
of a
to
film
wait.
ever.
Yeah, like so my first impression was it kind of was what I went into it assuming it would be, which was a little bit slow, a little bit droll, but extremely well written and well acted. That was
Well
what I
said.
came away with, and that was what I went in kind of expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had the same encounter, the same experience because, yeah, my first time watching this movie was probably January or February of this year, just because it was on Disney Plus. And it was a Robin Williams movie that I had never seen, so I put it on, and yeah, it was as advertised. It was what I expected. I thought what stood out for me was Robin Williams's performance was what I expected, and it also wasn't. I thought he'd be a lot more energetic, and I was grateful that he wasn't, truth be told, because I really like the flavors of Robin Williams that we get in this movie.
Mhm.
Could have picked a better word. But also I really just love like young Ethan Hawke is so good, and young other guy, the guy who's from Kenneth
Robert
Brothers.
Sean Leonard.
Yeah, that's the one. Though that's the one, the guy from Much Ado About Nothing. Yeah, those two, so good. And I love that they're still like best friends and they have a theater company. I just think that's like the nicest thing ever.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to do as much high profile stuff as Ethan, or at the very least, he's not in the MCU yet. And that's how I assess people's careers. So there it is. Lauren, how
Yeah.
about you? So, first time watching the movie versus this time, if you rewatched it for our chat tonight.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I was like totally into those Touchstone movies. Like Touchstone was at the top of the world. I was in love with Ethan Hawke. I was in love with Robert John Leonard, and I loved Robin Williams. So I watched that movie like repeatedly in the theater. I just loved it, and watching it again, I still love it just as much as I did back then. I just think that does it have its fault? Sure, but I'm and Jake knows this. I'm willing to let certain things go in my love of things. So yeah, I am excited to talk about it.
Brilliant. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I think I first watched this movie in English class in high school.
I think that's where I saw the scenes I saw too, was English class in high school.
Yeah,
We
and
watched Lion King.
oh, you watched Lion King? Wow.
Oh wait, no, it was in like social studies for some reason. I think
Oh.
they were lazy. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I remember I think it was like grade 11 or 12. And I don't know why this was an English class, but we were looking into different teaching methods and like how to teach. And so this was a movie, and like it was a really great example because Robin Williams does a lot of different activities with his class to like get them to fall in love and understand poetry and find their way in that. But like I just took it as like a class thing. So I didn't really love it. I kind of remember spacing out a lot of it in it because I didn't really relate to a lot of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I related to Robert Sean, what's his name? Because he was in, he was in acting and I was a theater kid. But other than that, I was like, oh, like they're boys in an all boys school, don't really relate to this. But I did remember really liking Robin Williams because of his past work that I had seen at that time. Going into it now, I don't think I liked it that much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate Robin Williams 100%. I think he's like the reason why I kept watching it through this round. But in general, I didn't really didn't relate to the guy's stories. It just didn't click for me, but really loved the teacher's path and his steadfast way of teaching the kids. So, yeah.
Well said. And let's hear from the teacher. Jake, same question. So if you remember the first time you saw it and what it meant to you then, and if you've rewatched it recently, I know you had time in between like the 2 hours when I asked you to join us and now, but if you've seen it recently, has the movie changed at all for you? Or what's that like?
So I didn't watch it in the theater, but I watched it like that next year when it was released on VHF, so like 90 or 91 or whatever. And I was 10 or 11 and I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And I think like Lauren, all those Touchstone films I loved Robert Sean Leonard. I loved him in Swing Kids. There was a million movies, sort of like period-esque pieces that he was in through like the early and mid 90s. I loved how subversive it was. I loved that it was about kids rebelling against the system. That's something that's always spoke to me. And I watch it probably at least every year since then. I mean, I don't know. It's one of the few perfect films. And my intellect, my writer's brain knows that it's not like entirely perfect, but it's so well told and so heartfelt that I think about it a lot when I'm teaching. I think about what he was willing to do to stand by his principles and to stand by what he believed in the face of corrupt administration that I've dealt with. Nobody listening to this, I'm not dealing with it now. Yeah, I don't know. There's those period of films for me, I think, because I was coming into middle school from like 90 to like 1993 is like the perfect year of films for me. It's a bizarre year, but there's a great lineup in that year. But there's something that rang true of that storytelling era for me. So this film fits directly smack in the middle of that. I don't know, that sort of aesthetic at the time.
Said. And I mean, you kind of touched on it, but like, has the meaning of the film changed for you at all since becoming a teacher and having taught for however many years you have taught versus when you weren't a teacher?
Yeah, so 20 years into teaching, I still think about him in that character an awful lot. My mom was a principal before that, so education was always a big part of our lives, and maybe that's why that film spoke to me. Yeah, it still speaks to me. It still gets to me every time they stand on the desk. You know, at the end, I mean, I'm just a mess, just crying, feeling all the feels, and having had my fair share of battles with people in power and kind of, you know, rules versus trying to actually reach kids. I don't know. It hasn't died for me yet, so I still hold it pretty high on a pedestal.
Nice. Let's check the comments here. Disney Dado says both my parents are teachers and they've never liked administrators. And I feel like that's definitely just a thing. It's universal. The movie was made like 89, I think,
Yeah.
early 90s,
Yeah.
but it's about the 1950s, but still feels very relevant because I guess that's just an ongoing struggle between administration versus, and not even just in the teaching world, just everywhere. There's always kind of butting heads between the people who are in positions of authority versus those who actually have to do the work. Which, yeah, there's a lot to discuss there. But I guess before we dive into that, it is the Robin Williams movie marathon. So I feel like let's talk about Robin a little bit and his performance specifically in this film. Does anyone have a favorite moment, or rather, I guess to rephrase that, what do we feel Robin Williams? I'll just call him Robin. We're on a first name basis. What do we think Robin brought to this movie that any other actor might not have had? Like, would the movie resonate in the same way if it had been somebody else? Because I think that's a through line, in my opinion, with a lot of Robin Williams movies, is that if it were most other actors, the actions of the character wouldn't be as endearing or forgivable. I think that's mostly pertinent with Mrs. Doubtfire, but I do think it's a little bit here as well. Like, I think if a different actor who didn't have the same warmth, in my opinion, had approached the role, then I might be more on the side of the administration, because I do think the character kind of crosses some lines that I don't think teachers should be crossing a little bit. But
What lines?
I just
know,
feel
yeah,
like, yeah, it reminded me a little bit of acting school, where he was getting very much into the intimate, personal, and emotional space of his students to try to make a lesson hit home. And like specifically when he was like getting right up into Ethan Hawke's personal space and like touching his eyes, and he's like, connect to the poetry. I was like, this scene is so good, but also you're taking a student who's very uncomfortable and putting him on display. And I'm not sure that I'm totally into that. I don't know.
I totally agree with you, Matt. Like, I like being a student from a theater school and like a regional arts program. Like, I experienced that a lot with teachers. And although I never felt like traumatized or harmed by that, I do question now as an adult, like, was that the best thing for that situation to have happened? Because, you know, like, if you have someone, like if you have a kid in that scenario where they can be triggered in that way, that might not be the best thing to do. And I think, I know this is like a dramatization and it's like not, and it's of a different time, but it does make me question like the, not the ethics of teaching, but like the ways in which you get the best of your students. Like, how can you bring out the best in your students without crossing those lines? And I don't know if there's an answer for that.
You know, I had a teacher in high school that he kind of crossed those lines, not necessarily like Robin Williams did, but he was always getting in trouble with the administration. I adored him because I felt like he was bringing out something in me that I had never had before. You know what I mean? Like, especially being an Asian American and kind of just taught to like eat your words and not, you know, get into any kind of conflict or any kind of, you know, just kind of just be midline emotional. You know what I mean? And he really taught me how to embrace my emotions. You know what I mean? And I really appreciated that as a teacher. So I, I watched the film when I was in my 20s, and I just remember the time he was fired by the administration, and I felt, you know, so bad for him because he was just a nice person who just like he'd invite us all over for dinners and just like took us all under his wing, and there was nothing lascivious about it or anything whatever. He just was you know, I would have loved all my teachers to have been like that, where I felt that they cared. You know what I mean? So that's my viewpoint on it.
I think in reference to what you said specifically about what Robin brought to it and how you are willing to allow him to do things, I think a good parallel to draw in this movie specifically is there's a scene where a kid gets paddled. And of course, we all know that that's wrong and that's bad. That's physical and laying hands on someone. He is laying hands on Ethan Hawke's character. He's like shaking him around and putting his hand and making him very uncomfortable. We do not question that. And it's his, obviously, there's no malice involved, so that helps. But also just the fact that he is excited for him. He's like, and he shows that. If you have an actor that's just like, looks like they're just trying to draw it out of him and there's no excitement for the other character, then you don't get that. You know, if they're just as stuffy as the other guys at the school, then that can come across as like not malicious, but almost like, oh, I don't know that he should be laying hands on this student. But you don't question it because he seems very excited for the outcome. He seems happy for his character.
Well said. Yeah, I think again, bring it back to what Robin Williams brings to it. Like, I think what you touched on, Jeanette, that's so good about it is that Robin he makes all the people acting with him look really good, which is like one of the things I carry really close from acting education that like didn't traumatize me. Just this whole idea about being gracious and giving to the people that you're acting with, so that it's not about you, but just trying to elevate them as much as possible. And I think we see that with Robin in like every movie, but especially in this movie. And maybe it's also because he's working with so many younger actors than him. So I do think that like whatever their dynamic was in real life, and based on what I read, Ethan Hawke and him had a weird relationship, which I think is mirrored in this movie, where they both made each other kind of uncomfortable because Ethan wasn't connecting to his Robin humor. But I just feel like, yeah, Robin elevates the kids in this movie, which is so crucial to this role and whoever's playing it. But yeah, Jake, what do you think? Either Robin or the teaching methods, all of it bundled.
Well, I'll disagree. I think mostly with the teaching method thing, but I think part of it is Robin's portrayal as such an earnest and genuine human being. Like, I mean, he's really the heart of an educator, not not someone who's fallen back on it, not someone who tried to have a career and then fell into teaching because they had to pay the bills. And he's genuinely an educator as a character. And I think one of the great threats to education is the over comfortness that we provide for kids. And I'm not saying to make them feel unsafe or harmed, but I think that education in the classroom or in a theater production, because I think about like those special bonds, which is a different bond than kids who are forced to take, sophomore English or whatever. You get to push them and bully them, but I mean bully as in prod and push in a way that other teachers and even their parents can't. I can tell you stories of the number of times I've had kids. I teach a show choir class, and they would sign up for it, and they would say, look, they have a lot of anxiety. They're not going to perform on stage, but we really want them to be in some kind of class. And I was like, oh, no, they're going to perform. And every single time I've had that happen about a half a dozen times. I've had that kid 3 years all the way through middle school, and they've always become one of my very top performers. And I think because they're in an environment where theater particularly, and I think English is tied into the theater mindset here that pushes us to understand. All right, sorry, the cat went
doing things. Meow.
Calm down, you're fine. That pushes us to understand humanity as we look at literature, as we look at plays, and you can't do that without also looking at yourself in some kind of way. And so I think it always traces a fine line between, like, I won't call it abuse because that's, I think, too strong a word here, but I think crossing a line and pushing them just to the line to really get out of themselves and define themselves. And I think for me, it's one of the things I've admired about the film, and particularly Robin's acting, in that he makes you believe that he's not a villain, or that we're not scared for Ethan Hawke's character. We're not afraid that he's in danger. We know he's going through it. He's in pain in that sort of way, but he's not in danger, and he's not being inflicted. And I think the scene you brought up about the spanking is actually what's meant to counter those two ideas, that there's that physical discipline, almost that military. I went to a school when I was younger that still did spanking. So like I understand, you know, what they're thinking in terms of this is how we make kids obey. And I think the Robin Williams character is juxtaposed against that, saying, no, this is actually how you do it, by getting personal with kids, by getting into their emotional space and finding out who they are and then pushing them.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. So glad we have Jake here.
It's the wine, don't worry.
There it is.
I'll be boiling in the morning.
I'm just so curious about like what people think in terms of his teaching methods with Robert Sean Leonard's character, Neil Perry, because like he goes into like his life, like stand up to your father. And I don't know how I feel about that. I'm curious, Jake, what you think about that.
I think it's great. I mean, maybe it's just, you know, maybe it's why I relate to this film, because I think philosophically maybe it just resonates. But it is a tricky line. But I think if we're really educators, what we're trying, our job is to get them to be independent people. And I think standing up to not only your parents, but also bosses and professors and whatever is kind of part of the job. And I think the lesson is that he looks at what the parents do to Neil's character as abuse of sort of as sort of almost community abuse, in that you're expected to go and do the manly thing and the real job thing, and the, you know, not the artsy fartsy, you know, kind of thing. And I think that's a whole rebellion against that mindset. And I think that's important to impress upon kids. And I think this is probably an outlier situation. You know, I mean, I think the number of times I may have suggested something like that is minuscule compared to sort of most of my teaching experience, you know? I don't know, but I love that he does it, because it stands up for the arts and this mindset that arts aren't a real career. So I think I look at it more at that level than him crossing a line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, and I think the thing that stood out to me that I really liked about that scene, I think more from a dramatic and narrative perspective, is that it, to me, very strongly illustrates him as a person alongside being a teacher. And by that, I mean, I feel like growing up, especially as a youth, I don't even want to say kid, like even as a young adult or even as an adult, just by nature of the position that teachers are in, I think we always have the assumption that they have all the answers. But then this shows him kind of making a judgment as a person that kind of walks that gray zone and walks that line. And like, it reminds me of a drama teacher I had in high school who Lisa knows, who I absolutely adore, but it was this person's like not first year of teaching, but first few years of teaching. And like in our grade 12 drama class, there was one student that like nobody liked. I'll just outright say it. There was this one student that nobody liked, and nobody wanted to work with them for our big final showcase. And they were sick one day. And then this teacher just sat us all down and had like an hour and a half long discussion about what we were going to do with this situation. Like, someone has to work with them. What are the issues that we're facing with this person? But then it turned into an entire class of us talking about this one student who wasn't there to defend themselves. And this was a Friday. Then this, like, she got word of it over the weekend, and then Monday's class was just her crying because she found out that we had this discussion about her. And then it was just kind of, for me, that was the moment where it opened my understanding to teachers are people too. And like the intention was there, but the approach wasn't. And then just kind of seeing how that domino affecting everybody on an emotional level that was like outside of the sphere of learning. And like experiences like that, I think happened as well when I was in acting school, especially because acting school really walks that line of your personal life and your school life. And yeah, like that's something that I very much, I think, appreciate about this movie is that he has the right intentions and he's such a beautifully flawed character, but I also like just adore watching him because it's Robin Williams. But that kind of makes me think of something else that I noticed when I was watching the film again today for my second time, was that when he leaves the school, he hasn't really changed the administration, but there have been tiny changes that have like planted seeds, I think, for change to happen for the better, just by merit of the fact that like half of the class are standing on the desks when he leaves, but the other half are still sitting. Like I absolutely love that because that's just an indication of like this is real life. He didn't
I
change everybody, but he
feel
changed
like that
just
points
enough.
out that he gave more of a hoot about the kids than the school, and that drives that point home. He knows better than to know that he's going to change the administration.
Yeah.
That's why he just goes about doing things the way he wants. Like when the other guy comes in the room and he's like, yeah, I'm doing what you're seeing right now. You're seeing it and I am doing it. And he doesn't go and try to tell them like, oh, look at this cool new way I teach. He knows that he'll be, but he also doesn't really hide it either. He never really tries to brush anything under the rug. He just wants to affect these kids' lives in a positive way. And he's not going to fight with the ones that aren't going to pay attention. He's going to help the ones that are, and he's going to work with them. And that seems to be what he does. He'll work with the people who's, like Disney Dado says, rip out the pages. And they show you who is reluctant to do that and who is not. And I feel like that was his barometer for like, yes, I can mold you. You're not going to pay attention. So just come along for this fun ride. And his impact on the class, I'll get into a little bit later when maybe we get onto some of the things we didn't care about the structure of the movie more so than the actual story but I feel like that's what they're kind of driving home there, is that he is worried about impacting their lives. He's not going to change the institution, and he knows that.
Except I feel, and I might have misinterpreted this, but I think there's a really nice moment where he looks out the window and he sees that other teacher like walking outside with his students, and then he smiles, and I like almost suspect that was just showing that he made the smallest of impacts on one of his coworkers, where he's changing how he teaches. And so it does move beyond just like that handful of students that he personally had the effect on. But if he's able to make that small change with one of the older people that are a part of the administration, then
because that guy was willing to talk to him.
Yeah.
He did, even though he sounded like he was against it, he did talk to him, and he was willing to hear what he had to say.
Was that the same guy that said, "I'm a realist, not an artist"?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I enjoyed him.
The table.
Yeah.
Yes. Fun. So yeah, I guess since Jeanette kind of mentioned it, what are some things about the movie that we didn't necessarily love? Like for me, I think the structure is it's kind of a little bit off, but I'm not sure. It grew on me more watching it this time around, possibly because I knew how things were going to unfold with Neil's character. Because the first time I watched it, I felt like that happened, and the fallout from it was just very fast. It seems to me like something that should have been explored with a little bit more time in the movie. But yeah, it didn't bother me as much this time. But Jeanette, what are your thoughts?
So I have two major things that I did not care for by the time the movie ended. One was Ethan Hawke's character in the end just turns out to be painfully shy. I thought we were going to find out something deeper. Why is he that way? I don't know. And then we meet his parents in the office, and I'm like, oh, here it is. And there it was not. There was nothing deeper. He's just seems to just be painfully shy. And his parents really don't care past him going to this school. Whatever. That's fine. He was a good character, though. My biggest gripe with the whole movie is that, so in the end, these kids have the choice to not sign this paper and to speak up and be like, no, it was not him. It was his family, and more specifically, his father. All right. And they have that chance. They all choose to sign the paper. Okay. He is literally packing his things. He's fired. He's on his way out the door. And that's when they decide that they're going to get up and stand on the desk. And he's still fired. He's still leaving. I'm like, what? Why? This doesn't solve anything. This doesn't solve anything. Now you might all be expelled and he's fired already. He's literally walking out the door right now. So like, what? Either stick to your guns and keep your spot in the school, or stand up and help the guy keep his job and stand up for what you believe in. So that really, really threw me for a loop, because I'm like,
they did not seize that day.
No. So that really, I was like, okay, like, I don't know. That was my biggest gripe. Everything else was just pacing and too many wide shots of a lake and birds. Like that's totally
Shot?
It was, yeah, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's a fancy school. I can see it. It's good.
I mean, I would have been happy if they focused less on the other students and just kept it on Ethan Hawke and Claudio from Much Ado About Nothing. Because, yeah, I don't know. The others
Robert
just,
John Leonard.
yeah, that's the guy, Robert Louis Stevenson. Because the others just, they were fine. They were there, but I didn't find their stories as engaging. And I don't know if that's because the actors weren't as engaging, or I don't know.
I like the kid who was like starting to be like a beatnik, and he's the one that like brought the girls to the cave and everything. Like, he was cool, and I would have kind of liked a little more insight into him aside from just being like the more rebellious one, I guess. But in the end, I really just wanted to know why Ethan Hawke's character was the way he was, and then we really never get that. He just is a shy kid. So,
Well said. Lauren, how about you? Well, things that you don't necessarily love about the movie.
I don't, honestly, I love the whole film. I
That
just
was
do.
too.
I love the whole film. I mean, I know that, what you were talking about with walking up to the line with the behavior, yes. But I don't know, like, back in that day, there was just something about, like, Robin Williams films and Touchstone films, and just having this. I was talking to my sister the other day about how they don't make films like they did with Touchstone films anymore. They were a very specific brand. Very, the dramas were high intensity dramas, and the comedies were screwball comedies that I love even to this day. Like, I can watch any Touchstone film from that era and love it. And yes, I can find bits and pieces that it's like, maybe make my eyes roll or whatever. But honestly, and for true, I still love this movie.
Oh, and there's so much to love.
Yeah.
I love this movie more than I don't love this movie. And even the things that I say, like, make me mildly uncomfortable are also my favorite parts of the film, like that scene where he's like touching Ethan Hawke's face and being like, embrace the poetry. It's not what he says, but that's the vibe. Like, I think that's my favorite scene in the film. It's so, like, the way it's shot, everything. It's brilliant. Yeah. We love a steady cam shot. Lisa, how about you?
Okay, I don't hate it like I did Peter Pan 2003. I have to live. Okay, my biggest thing. The big thing that I was like, this is so ridiculous, was Josh Charles's character Knox with the whole girl from the public school thing. It was so cringy, and at the end when he like does the poem and goes back to his school, and they're like, what did she say? What did she say? And like, clearly she like walked away, and all he cared about was the fact that he did it. I'm like, that's very selfish. You put a girl in a position where it was uncomfy. And like, I liked her. Like, I wanted to know more about her.
Lisa, did you get nervous like I did? I'd never, like, at least this scene I had never seen, when the girl's passed out and he's like looking at her. I'm like, oh no, we're going to get really problematic right now, aren't we? But then it was just a nice little chast kiss on the head. And I was like,
But like,
crisis averted.
But like, and like that was fine. Like, okay, fine. It was the whole school thing with the poetry. Like, don't do that, bro. Like, don't like you're feeling the vibes that she's not interested. She's like saying, no, I'm not interested. I have like the other guy is gonna beat you up. Like, no. Turn around and go back to your school, Josh Charles. Go back to The Good Wife. Like, I'm not interested. So yeah. I do like Josh Charles though. Like, I think he's a great actor. So I like his performance. I want to see more of. I just wish it was less cringy. Overall, I thought all the students looked the same. So it was very hard for me to distinguish young Ethan Hawke and Robert Sean Leonard. But I just like I couldn't get the believability of Robert Sean Leonard's like desire for acting. Like he fell in love with it so fast, which like cool kids fall in love with things really quickly. And he had that huge fight with his father and he went through all that anxiety. But the escalation from like falling in love with theater to committing suicide is wild to me. And I don't know if they were handling it well. And so I don't think that part aged well. And the whole scene where the dad comes in slow-mo, it was laughable to me. I was like, I don't know if this is aging well. I don't know if like, it's not computing for me. And then I think the last thing I would say is, yeah, I think it was Robin Williams' assertion into Neil's life. And I think the reason why I have a problem with that is because one of my high school drama teachers, I think she said this
We're
beautiful.
spilling all of the tea on this art
But-
school in Mississauga.
She was really honest with me in like my senior year, where she was like, I was going to study to become a social worker and like I have those skills, but if I was a social worker, I would want to save everyone. And I felt that kind of like savior-esque character type from Robin Williams. And I get teachers have this responsibility to, again, bring out the best in their students. And it's great when they're passionate about the things that they teach and they are passionate about their teaching. But I think that line was crossed a lot. And I don't lean to the side of like, it was the teacher's responsibility for Neil's actions, but I don't like, I wonder, I wanted to know more about Robin Williams's like, his like turmoil. Like it was very much like he is this person and he's like helping the student, but there was no like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing like, is this the right thing for me to do as a teacher? Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting dialogue that I would love to explore. So yeah, those are the three things.
Yeah, no, fair. And for the most part, like, I think I agree with all of it. The thing that really stood out to me on this rewatch, which I don't like as the person watching the movie, but as someone who's like just appreciating how the movie was made, I think I like it narratively. The cheesy slow-mo scene where the dad finds him. First off, I think the scene should have just been cut at the slow-mo and not sped up again, or just been sped up. But there's the part when the mom is crying and then he just looks at her and says, "Stop it." I was like, I hate this man so much.
Yeah.
But it was just but like in the best way possible, because it just, in that moment, him telling his crying wife to stop crying over the discovered suicide of their son, that is exactly why he killed himself, because that was the guy who like had a stronghold over his life. So like, to me, that's just such great filmmaking. Like in that one moment, you just see the sympathy, but you also see exactly why it happened. And it was
yeah. While we're on that topic, I did notice, just because Hook was the last movie we did, I know it was written by J.M. Barrie. It wasn't like they wrote this part of it into Hook, but both of these movies have the theme of, from the cradle, boys being told having their lives mapped for them. I mean, they even say that in there, and that is in the Peter Pan book, you know, like he hears his life being mapped out for him.
Yeah.
And then Neil's dad is prescribing what's going to happen to his life, and that's what drives him over the edge. So I just found that, I don't know why, but like that it seemed relevant because when Robin Williams was that was a theme to two stories about why somebody either changes their life completely, like running away to Neverland, or committing suicide. Like that was the impetus for a major life-changing event.
Yeah.
Well said.
I have a question. I don't remember this, but when Neil shoots himself, like he's in the house with the parents. Like it doesn't seem like they heard the shots.
They were asleep, and he literally wakes up and goes, "What was that sound?"
I think it's just that we don't hear the shot.
Oh, we don't hear it.
We don't.
Yeah.
They don't do it.
But like when he gets to the office, there's smoke from the gun, and I'm like, that wouldn't have been around. Like the time it takes for him to have gone out of bed to get to the office, the smoke of the gun.
It's an old gun too. You got to figure it's 59, and that gun might have not even been new.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I thought the same thing, and then I was like, no, old guns operated quite differently.
Yeah, I keep forgetting it's 59. It doesn't feel like a 50s movie, yet at the same time, it very much does.
Yeah.
Because there's no Grease and there's no Elvis. I don't know. There's no Pink Ladies or T-Birds. In my opinion, that's the school experience for everyone in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
It was Knox's love interest.
That's true. Yeah. We got a little bit of it. We got a little bit of it.
Bobby socks and cheerleader sweaters. Yeah.
Which is Bobby says, I live in a highly religious area of southern Manitoba. The stop it to parents of children's death by suicide is very real. They don't even mention cause of death. Yeah.
This can be our next topic, but that was one of the things I noticed. It wasn't something I didn't like, but I found it very interesting that like in the 50s, it would have been shameful.
Yeah.
For someone to commit suicide. And that wasn't brought up in the remainder of the film. And I was a little shocked at that wasn't a theme in it. I did think they would touch on that. But the fact that they even announced that to the school, that he actually committed suicide, I found that kind of interesting.
No, and I think this is why, like, if I had one major complaint, is that I think that should have happened sooner. And there should have been more time to explore the repercussions and the aftermath of the death, instead of just being crammed into the last 20 minutes, because I do think there's a lot of fascinating stuff to look into there. But anyway, Jake, what are your thoughts? Things that you don't necessarily love, or just
I think for me, you know, listening to you all tear apart a film I loved. It's
okay, we're all adults here.
we are all adults here. I think one of the things that's important to remember is the time period in which like the storytelling tropes of the day, I think that doesn't mean they've all aged well, nor that they've dealt with everything perfectly, but I think one of the things I liked about the Touchstone films, and there were a few others who were doing it, but some of the questions you brought up that you wish they had explored more, I think there was a sense in that day that the sort of semi-art films assume that their audience was bringing that other part of the conversation to it, and therefore in our very explain everything to me now culture was not necessary in that time. So like even those wide shots of the lake and the birds and the things like that, I think are important to that. It's almost a literary style rather than sort of a pulp fiction, sort of a narrative style. The suicide thing used to bother me a little bit in that I did feel like it was accelerated. Like I was like, all right, calm down. You're okay. Until I had a student who went through the same thing. I had a student who was eligible to sign up for an elective of mine that was their entire world basically. And the school and the parents wanted them to do this sort of organizational class because they were kind of a disorganized hot mess of a kid. And I fought and I said, if you don't put him in the class, I will quit. And they did put him in the class, and we got through 2 years of that elective together. And at the end of 8th grade, they wrote me a note and said, you don't know this, but I had thought about suicide so many times, and I can't tell you that it was your class was the only class that saved me in the last 2 years. And until I got to that moment, I didn't understand it, and then suddenly I did understand it. So what started as a flaw is like, oh, this is a very real thing for kids whose emotions and hormones are out of whack to begin with, and so they escalate very quickly.
Yep.
I think a flaw for me that would have helped a lot of the questions and setups that a lot of you brought up is that this all takes place over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think had they compressed multiple years into a timeline, like maybe even the breadth of 4 years in high school to kind of develop that, even in sort of timeline sequences, that would have sped up, the sort of middle boring parts and truncated the first part of the film as sort of freshman year and the last part of the film is sort of senior year or something like that. I think would have made it slightly less angsty, but I also think that's a characteristic of films from that era, that all of it was compressed into one thing to make you feel one thing, and that actually in this film the main character is education, not Robin or any of the kids. It's almost like watching the musical Titanic. Titanic is the character, or even the film Titanic. It's about the collective experience and the philosophy of the thing more than the actual events that kind of pepper it throughout. But I think a timeline that was longer than 8 months or 10 months or whatever a school year runs would have helped make it all seem slightly more realistic in that time frame.
I also feel like Neil's character, it's not so much his being denied the acting that makes him do it. You realize when his dad's giving him that speech and he goes, you're going to go to military school tomorrow. So there's one, he's getting pulled away from his friends. You're going to go there. It's military school. So let's count that as another one. You are then going to go to medical school. And he goes, Dad, that's 10 years. And he goes, well, don't act like it's a prison sentence. But he now is staring down 10 years of being completely out of control of his life when he thought that time was about to end. He thought he was about to get control of his life once he graduated and did what he was supposed to do. And now that's 10 years and he sees he's going to be almost 30 and there it is. So I think that really more so than being denied the acting or as much is why he does that. Because he's like, well, that's it. There's a decade of my life gone and then I'm doing something I don't even want to do. So really that's it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to share something that I don't normally share, but in that time of my life, I was very suicidal. Like I just didn't want to be around, and it was that, like what Jake was saying, the student that came up to him and said that was one thing that helped him. That's how I felt, and and also just feeling like a young gay person at that time as well, and not knowing, how to express that at all. I just saw so much of that in that film that I could relate to, and it was just, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to. But I just think it's like in a beautiful way,
I think the acting in this film also is meant to be, and I think it's stylistic of this period, representative of being gay, getting married, whatever that thing is that parents have forced on kids, outside of that realm. I think it's meant to be a universal thought rather than a very specific thought, although it's through a very specific thought that almost doesn't track quite in the film in terms of that leap from literature and poetry to dramatic acting, which I think a timeline again would have fixed. But I think it's meant to be highly representational and feeling, like you're repressed, especially if you come from a religious background or whatever the things you're dealing with. Anyway.
I think too, and Lisa touched on this, I don't generally like to do the whole like gendering movies like, oh, this is a movie for girls, this is a movie for boys. I don't like to do that. But when it is so, it's an all boys school. The movie is about all boys. Like there is, and it's about boys' lives being decided for them because in the time period they're representing, that they had things that like were successful careers for men, and that was it. And there, it is kind of undeniable that this will touch home for boys more than girls. That's just kind of intrinsic to it. And this is not a great analogy, but for some reason in my brain, maybe because this was the movie that I felt this way about, it's not in the same genre at all. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to compare the actual movies, but
Heathers?
no. So, oh God. Okay. I went down a path with Heathers in relation to this, but it doesn't have to do with that part of it. I will touch on that if you want. But what I was going to say is the one that kind of did what I assume this might have done for young boys for me was The Craft, where it was a group of girls who were doing things that they were not supposed to be doing, but that there was a girl who was finding herself and maybe got into some, like and again, I'm not trying to compare the movie so much as like that movie definitely will hit home for girls a heck of a lot more than it's going to hit home for boys, I think. But for the Heathers thing, the thing that I found very interesting was that so the thing that I found interesting was that this movie talks about teen suicide, right? And at the time when it came out, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't go see this in theaters, but at the time that this movie came out, there was not a ton of things talking about teen suicide. But at the same time, Heathers, that came out the same year or a year after, very much plays teen suicide like it is a hot topic. It is everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. It gets brought to the forefront. Whereas I feel like one of the things about Dead Poets Society that was so talked about in the reviews and everything was like how shocking and like groundbreaking it was to have to be talking about this subject about teen suicide. And so I just find it interesting that both at the same time that it was shocking, it was also ingrained enough in culture where another movie was almost spoofing the idea of teen suicide being this huge hot topic. So yeah, it's funny that you say Heathers because I think Heathers hits home for both genders, both sexes, whatever. But
Heathers is for everyone, yeah.
But I do think that it does have a tie-in as far as the time period that they both actually came out. Not that they're based in, but that they came out in 89.
Heathers is actually the year before, surprisingly.
There you go. So I do find it very interesting, even though technically none of those are, well, one of them's a suicide in that movie, but the whole, to the adults, teen suicide is this big, like, talked about thing.
Mm-hmm. So, it's just also interesting comparing the two of them because in Heathers, kind of the point is that the suicide is being exploited for attention and for, well, attention in one form or another. Whereas in this, it's the exact opposite and it just is not being spoken about enough. And I think kind of the middle ground and the point that I feel both films in some capacity are trying to express is that more healthy, open communication is needed.
Yeah. It's just, if you read some of the reviews of Dead Poets Society, like that's one of the things they're like, oh, it's very groundbreaking that we're talking about this, but yet there's a movie that's like almost spoofing how much it's talked about in the same time. Very
I think it's the spoofing that in those days sort of was the defining thing between taking it seriously and not. And I'm not saying that's a good metric, but I think in that era, Heathers was more looked at as a rebellious film and not one that should be held up in sort of very conservative late 80s, early 90s culture versus Dead Poets Society that was clearly laid out that Neil was the tragic character in this thing, and I think that that perception between those two is maybe what led a little bit to that. That'd be my guess.
I want to add that like this movie, obviously, for me and the discussion that we're having now, like it's so important to have like mental health structures and supports in schools and institutions like this. And obviously it was a big gap in the 50s as it showed. But maybe this is the reason why I didn't relate or like Neil's character, was because I couldn't get past his privilege. And I know mental health does not distinguish like who's privileged and who's not. You can be depressed and you can be suicidal and be rich or poor, it doesn't matter. But I could not get over that the entire class, the institution was focusing on privileged, white, maybe straight, able-bodied boys. And I felt like there was like the diversity was lacking. And again, 1950s space story, I understand. But Disney Shadow actually had a comment. Do you feel this film was about the plight of the elite? A little bit. So I think this movie does a great job of highlighting the gaps and what's missing in institutions and the faults of institutions and administrators. I wish it wasn't just solely in this private school for white boys, white privileged boys.
I'm gonna say that's an unfair assessment from I hear what you're saying, and I teach at a very elite school, like big money, and I used to think that way because that was my first time in that world, and I was like, oh, I hate all of you. You're all terrible white people, and I just hate every single one of you. And then I learned about the world, and I think that. I think it's a reflection of the time period, and so it wasn't going to touch on those topics to begin with, and maybe an updated version that does touch on those topics would be great. But I think as we look at films and talk about films, I think it can be unfair in a way, in the strictest sense of looking at the film. I'm not talking about the broader conversation of inclusion, but to say that the film can't be universal because there's not enough this or there's not enough that in it, and there should be all of those things. I'm not, but just taking the thing as it exists, mental health is such a universal thing, and it took me a long time. I've been at this very elite school for 14 years, and it took me probably almost 8 of those, half of that time, I would say, to understand that these are people too, in kind of a way. And I don't know. I don't think it's about the elite, because I think that the pressures of your life being mapped out, whether it's your father sending you to military school or whether it's you having to work 3 jobs to put your kids just to put food on the table, those are different scenarios, but they result in the same sort of oppression of people where they're at. And I don't think they're not equal in the strictest sense, but it's for, as far as children are concerned, that they didn't choose to be born into a world. So to put that on top of them is unfair, to say that it's not the same and yet not. Yeah.
It's also unrealistic. It's a period piece, right? It's
Correct.
1959. And to tell this story, like, they did show a public school. You couldn't really, I don't think, tell this story. Also, it's about the guy. It's the guy who wrote the thing. It happened to him. So, like, he is telling you a story of what happened to him. And we cannot deny that there are people in this world that live that life. And if they want to tell us a story about it and make it accurate, this is what it's going to look like. Because I felt that way too. But I think I just, again, put that under that heading of, this is going to be more relatable for some people than others. And that's okay. Like, not every movie is for every person. And if you can't connect with it, either because you're not rich, because you're not male, because you're not white, that's fine. That's okay. Maybe you can find a piece of it you can relate to. Maybe the piece is Robin Williams. Maybe it's his character. Like, I felt the same way too. And it's okay to not feel like it's relatable, but it was 1959 and this guy was in a private school. And actually, so in reading about this and researching it, the guy went to the school in freaking Tennessee. And then they based the movie in Vermont because it's more believable that there's a bunch of rich white people in Vermont than it is that there are in Tennessee. So there's already a little bit of fictitiousness, but the rest of it is what he experienced. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole element of having it be in such an elite institution is that it just takes the whole narrative plot point and the whole theme of rebellion and it just amps it up, because like 1950s, again, I said I think of Grease and T-Birds and the Pink Ladies and like this era where teenagers were starting to really rebel. And if you kind of have that as the historical backdrop, but then you like focus on kids who are in like the one school environment where they can't have that experience, I think it elevates things to a certain point where it kind of fuels the movie that we have. But no, that is definitely an element of it that I think is kind of isolating. But yeah, it didn't super take me out of it. Granted, I've never been to an Ivy League private school, but I don't know. I guess the art school experience, not exactly the same, but it is still a school that has sort of a level of differentiation, I think, from other people. So that element is kind of there as well. And yeah. Jump back into the comments here. Bob says, there are some of us who don't make the decision to conform or not. Our diversity has been predetermined for us, and accepting like teacher like Keating is invaluable. Yeah, and I mean, we have kind of touched on it, but yeah, just how do we feel about how this film portrays a teacher? I mean, we have kind of already discussed that, but we sort of focused on the things that were maybe not great, but yeah, like how do we just feel about Robin Williams as that support system in this film?
I think that I think the character, like we're not supposed to really know. They do let you know a little bit about his personal life, but much like a teacher, I felt like that was in keeping. Like we don't know a whole heck of a lot about him. Mm-hmm. And we're not supposed to. We're just supposed to know how he relates to his students. And I feel like, and going back to one of the first questions, like if it was not Robin Williams, I don't know that that would be okay. I would need to know why he is this way, but I don't need to know why he is this way because he cares about his students. And I think in the end, that's it, right? Like he cares and we can tell. So that's what makes it a teacher and not like we said before, either a threat or questionable or whatever. Like he is a caring teacher and that's what he is. He comes across that way.
And like when we look at his big lesson, the Carpe Diem, the seize the day, what do we think he's trying to impress on them? And is there any student we think gets it versus those who don't? Because I think the interesting thing about this movie is that we see multiple interpretations of that message. And I think some are more in keeping with what his intention was, and some are just using it as permission to rebel, which kind of going back to what I said about how it's set in the 1950s, but in a very conservative setting. It's almost like I think some of those students latch on to his lesson and misinterpret it willingly or consciously or not as permission to just be rebels, whereas I feel others have a fuller understanding of it. But yeah, what are our thoughts on Seize the Day? Lauren, I see your hand.
Well, man, teacher. I just thought it was a lesson in rebellion to rebel against against the system, and there was something about that in my generation about rebelling against the system as well, because we came from like a very when I was a teenager, that was the Reagan era and very conservative, very, whatever. And breaking into the 90s which were, in the Clinton era, and all of a sudden we're, faced with what were we doing for a decade? You know what I mean? I mean, even though I enjoyed my time in the 80s, but I don't know, like there was just part of me that was dead the entire time. And to see somebody, whether it was good or bad or whatever, see somebody, and especially somebody like Robin Williams, who, is brilliant actor and really brought a lot to that piece. I think it was just kind of like giving people permission to rebel again was a good thing. And, I didn't think there was any misinterpretation of it. I just felt like everybody was doing what they thought they should do, you know?
Yeah, well said. Like, when I think misinterpretation, I mostly think of the kid who snuck the article into the paper saying that girls should be allowed in the school, and then he puts on the whole show at the meeting about having God phone him. And and I don't, I do feel like that was a situation where, and I think it might even be different because he took his friends down with him without asking them. And then that was kind of a situation where it felt like he was using Seize the Day as a scapegoat to justify his actions for like screwing over his friends, as opposed to actually seizing the day in the way that Mr. Keating intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there were always villains in the film. I mean, not that they were villains, but somebody that you hated or somebody whatever. But I just go back to, I felt the lesson was rebel.
Well said. Any other thoughts on Seize the Day and rebellions?
Seize the Day is kind of the perfect example of these films that tried to find more universal truths in them, in that Seize the Day is the lesson, and yet it's interpreted broadly and differently by the characters, from printing a paper and forming a poet society to killing yourself. I mean, really, that's the version of seizing the day. And I think that idea of how it translates to different people makes the film then really less about a private school in Vermont for boys, and more of a film about what does it mean for you personally. The film asks you to answer that question, to seize the day, and to stand up for the things that you believe in. And it doesn't matter from what point of view you're coming from. I think that, yeah, I always found that to be the heart of the thing that explained the unspoken character of Education, who is kind of the star role. Because honestly, at that time, Education, from the 50s until probably the mid 80s to the late 80s, when this film was coming out, actually hadn't changed almost at all. Education was very much taught the same way. There were, very much the same principles, even to the point of, I went to a school in the mid 80s that still valued spanking, no longer does, but that was still a thing that was being done in that time, carried over from, even before the 50s. So I think the film really was kind of a separating point in Education, and that the Seize the Day moment was that universal truth that I think allowed all of us to look at it and then look at our moment in life where we are and go, how do I then seize the day right where I'm at?
Yep. Absolutely. That was what I took away. And I didn't want to say that the suicide fell under that. I felt like that might be a touchy thing, but since I have a fellow person here reciprocating that, feel like I felt like that was the moment where they're telling you that, like, this can be taken in a wrong or harmful way. There are ways. And like you said, like the kid who just very recklessly wrote that letter, and that was not necessarily great for his friends or Mr. Keating. Like it didn't solve much, It didn't do anything that he was hoping to do with it. And that towards the end of the film, there are people that are taking that either too far or the wrong way, or that, you know, they're not seizing the day in a way that's making the day or their lives better.
Well said. Let's jump into the comments here. Disney Dado asks, do we think people were surprised to see Robin step into this style role more or less right after Mork and Mindy? Like, for me, in terms of historical perspective, like I came to discover Robin Williams after this movie had been made, and he was just someone who had like a big body of work. I'm not sure what his transition would have been in. Like, was this his first role like this? Because I think his first movie role was Popeye, which would have been very Mork and Mindy-esque.
He had another one that Disney Dado actually showed me, and I think it was after this, though, was the Robert De Niro and him film. And now I can't remember the name of it, but it's the guy, Awakenings. That's it. The guy.
Oh, yeah, Awakening.
So
Yeah,
he had shown me he had shown me the trailer for that, but I think it did come out the year after this.
Yeah.
So, but this would have been
Good Morning Vietnam came before it, apparently. So that's
good. I think Good Morning Vietnam. I think Disney Dado's right. That was the film. That was his breakout film, and I remember watching that and just thinking, "Wow, this is not the Robin Williams that I grew up with." Although I have to say, I love Popeye. I love Popeye.
I think it's good for what it is.
Yeah.
I love a Shelley Duvall movie, no matter what it is. I love Shelley.
Yeah.
Poor Shelley Duvall.
No.
Yeah, fairy tale
this
theater.
film
principles.
feels very much like that trajectory that, you know, the Daniel Radcliffe doing Equus after Harry Potter, you know, as a comedian through Mork and Mindy, and of course all of his stand-up and even Good Morning Vietnam. It feels like he wanted to prove that he could be a serious actor as well, and sort of took this thing that swung him far in the other direction than what people would have expected his career to do at that time.
Well said. Let me just check the comments here. Bob says, I've seen World According to Garp. I have not seen World According to Garp. I don't even know what World According to Garp is.
Oh, that's such a good film. Yes, that's right.
Why are we watching it?
That was even before Good Morning. Yeah, Good Morning Vietnam. That's actually that is one of my favorite Robin Williams films.
I've never even heard of this one. I'm so like
blown. It's this guy who was raised by a feminist woman who she wanted to have a son and kind of had a tryst with a soldier, and you know, that was dying, and he was raised under this really like feminist regime, and one of his best friends was transgender woman who was played by John Lithgow. I thought John Lithgow was amazing in that role. I mean, even though I don't, nowadays, you want transgender people to play transgender people. But at that time, I thought that he did it very sensitively. Yeah. And I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen World According to
if it's John Lithgow and Robin Williams, I got to see it. That's amazing.
It's such a good movie.
Wow.
Yeah, there's just such a treasure trove of Robin Williams movies that the reason it took me until this year to watch Dead Poet Society is because I'm trying to just space them out so that I always have a new Robin Williams movie to appreciate and go to. Yeah. Even though I think I've seen all the ones already. Well, no, I'm going to kind of be rediscovering 1 Hour Photo and The Birdcage because I've only seen both of those once. 1 Hour Photo was on a bus, so that doesn't even really count. But yeah. Well, you know what? I think we're going to move into our game, which I'm very excited for.
Oh, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
One very interesting fact that I loved when I looked up the guy who wrote this movie. He also wrote a number of great other films that I love, including and director of 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, And have you never heard of that movie?
No.
Oh my God. It's Joe Pesci and it's fantastic.
I love Joe Pesci.
And then he also wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but he rewrote it in 7 days. It was originally written as a serious film for like adults. And
How is that a serious movie in any multiverse?
So it started as a children's film called Teeny Weenies. Then it was called, I'm not kidding. Then it was called Grounded or Groundings or something. And it was like a mature film. And then they gave it to him 7 days before starting to shoot to rewrite. And he wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
very exciting.
I had no
loved
idea.
that story. Yeah.
Jesus.
I found that out and I was so thrilled. I was like, oh my God. So,
Oh, I
and I
enjoyed
would
that.
suggest 8 heads in a duffel bag, but yeah.
I'm intrigued and scared. Yeah, and also this was directed by Peter Weir, who did Truman Show, which is like tied for my favorite film of all time with Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I adore
fantastic.
that. Yes,
Wow.
so good. If I could figure out an excuse to have Truman Show for one of these, I
A
will.
Jim Carrey month? Are you freaking kidding me?
That's true.
Easy.
Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, Truman Show,
There you go.
and that's it.
Yeah, there
No,
you go.
and Eternal
Bruce
Sunshine.
Almighty.
Maybe. Oh yeah, Bruce Almighty.
Love
Oh yeah,
that.
I feel like Jim was kind of on a similar trajectory to Robin. I don't think his serious
He
roles
did
were
that
as
number
good.
23 or something that was
Oh,
supposed to be
yeah.
mildly horror-esque.
That was a movie that happened. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Okay. So for the game, it's I don't really have a name for the game, but I'll just call it's the Dead Poet game. So I'm really excited about this one. I am going to be reading you an excerpt of poetry, and you have to tell me if the person who wrote it was alive or dead in 1959, which is the year that this movie takes place.
Oh my God.
We'll
Yeah.
Are you going to tell us who wrote it, or do
No,
we have to guess
'cause
that
that's the
part
other
too?
thing. If you can
Jesus.
also tell me who the poet is, you'll get an extra, let's say, 5 points.
Oh my God. Yeah, look at him. He's doing exactly how I feel right now.
Yeah.
What? Are you
So,
kidding me?
You get 1 point if
One of
you
them better be
correctly
Dr.
ass-
Seuss.
100%.
Oh, I didn't think of Dr. Seuss. Oh well. One of them.
Oh, crap.
So you get 1 point if you get alive or dead correct, and then you get 5 points or 6, I guess, if you also know who the poet is.
Shel Silverstein.
And they had to be alive in 1959.
Alive or they have to have existed before 1959, because you are telling me if this person was alive or dead in 1959.
Oh, not.
Okay.
But as a poet?
Yeah,
Or just like born?
just born.
Okay, hold on. Explain to me again.
Okay.
One more time slowly.
Yeah, I'm going to read you a piece of poetry, and then you just have to tell me if the person who wrote it was alive or dead in 1959. So
Okay.
you're just holding up alive or dead. If you're super ambitious, you can also write down who you think the poet is, and if you're right, you get an extra 5 points.
Okay,
Okay, here we go.
do this.
Ahem. Here we are. Poem 1. Over the edge of the purple down, where the single lamplight gleams, know ye the road to the merciful town that is hard by the sea of dreams. I will read it again. Hold on. Over the edge of the purple down, where the single lamplight gleams, know ye the road to the merciful town that is hard by the sea of dreams.
Oh my God.
Okay, alive or dead?
Okay. Oh,
Alive,
Oh.
alive. Oh, is that dead? Okay.
red. Why is mine backwards?
I don't know. Well, Lisa, you got a point. They're
Yeah.
dead. They were dead in 59. That was Rudyard Kipling
Oh.
from Jungle Book.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yes.
I hate this game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
This is how we.
Game.
It's so
This is how we
fun.
got.
We get to share
love with-
poetry.
We love it.
We get to
Yeah.
share poetry. Here we go. Next. And also the meter in some of these is really weird, and I truthfully don't care for all of these poets. Here we are. Sweet, I blame you not for my... Okay, again. Sweet, I blame you not, for mine the fault was. Had I not been made of common clay, I had climbed the higher heights unclimbed yet, seen the fuller air, the larger day.
God.
Dead, dead, dead.
Sounds Shakespeare to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, is
Yeah.
anyone going to venture to guess who it was? No?
I'm going with Lisa. It's Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I'm going with Shakespeare as well.
Well, you're up.
Emily Dickinson.
Going against the grain. I like it.
Dickinson. That sounds like Dickinson.
Okay, Lisa, are you locking in Dickinson?
Yeah, I'm gonna lock in Dickinson.
Well, you're all right that they're dead, but you're all wrong. It was Oscar Wilde.
Oh, geez, I should have known that one.
Darn.
Was that Dorian Gray? No. Is it?
No, it's a one-off poem. Also,
Oh,
I looked
okay.
up these poems literally 5 minutes before I opened up this studio. So, like, these aren't their greatest works. They're the first ones that showed up on Google. You're right. Next.
Okay.
Oh, this is another one I don't care for. Ahem.
Well, it's not Shakespeare. You just gave it away.
It's true, I did. Okay. I'm through with this grand looking glass hotel where adjectives play croquet with flamingo nouns. Methinks I shall absent me for a while from rhetoric of these rococo queens.
Huh.
Oh, God.
I feel like I want to say one person, but I feel like that sounds too modern.
Okay, we've got an alive, and alive, and alive. Alive T.S. Eliot. All right. Does anyone else want to guess for who it is?
No. Because my guess contradicts my answer.
I don't know.
They were alive, and it was Sylvia Plath.
Of course it was. So
Of course it was.
Obviously.
I'm surprised that
Okay.
wasn't as depressing as her other work.
I actually have never read any Sylvia Plath.
You don't
I
know.
like how Jake's answer is consistently T.S.
T.S.
Eliot.
Eliot. I respect,
One of them.
Stop
One
talking
time you're
twice
gonna be
twice a
right.
day.
I respect that. That's honestly the strategy I would use. At 1 point, you're probably going to get a point or 5 points. So next. Oh, this might be an easy one. Ahem. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. If you can sing this to the Gilligan's Island theme. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. All right, dead, dead, dead. Jake says dead.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
say-
Poe? He says Poe.
I don't know. You said something about a carriage.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Dickinson on this one.
Okay.
Me too. I'm going to go with Dickens.
Lisa and Lauren, you both get 5 extra points. It's Emily
Wow!
Dickinson.
I was like,
Oh, Emily Dickinson. What am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking Dickens.
Yeah.
no. I'm
Charles? No.
Which
All
I
right.
watch Dickinson on Apple TV because Haley Steinfeld is amazing.
There's an
Oh
Emily
my gosh.
Dickinson show with
Yeah.
Haley Steinfeld?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Oh, you
Mark,
haven't seen Dickinson?
it's great.
I
like
would
it.
watch
Yeah,
that.
it's
Okay.
really good.
Okay, I'll get on board. Next. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more.
That's Poe.
There
That's
you
Poe
go.
for sure.
Dead Poe.
Dead Poe.
Dead Poe.
Dead Poet Society.
Oh.
You all
I see what you did there.
That's hilarious. Dead Poe.
well done. Dead Poe. I didn't even put those two together. I love it.
For
All
a
right.
second, I thought you were saying 'twas the night before Christmas, and then I realized it was
Very close.
Oh my gosh.
the
if only.
beginning was very similar.
Similar.
Just such good alliteration. Nodded, nearly napping. So good. Almost want to say quoth the raven nevermore, but that doesn't come in that passage. It comes later. But he's building to it, and I respect that. Next. Ahem. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you.
Mm.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Wow.
talking about atoms, so it must be someone that was alive at some point in that time period.
That's true.
All right, we got 3 for alive. 4 for no.
What?
What?
It's Walt Whitman, and he was long dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
When did
Was
he
that?
die?
When did we discover the
He
atom?
died in 1892. Walt Whitman died.
So before that, apparently,
Sailing
Yeah.
the
I guess
ocean blue.
so.
Okay.
we're
Next.
not scientists, you know.
All in green went my love riding on a great horse of gold into the silver dawn. 4 lean hounds crouched low and smiling. The merry deer ran before. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I didn't actually read these. I just copied and pasted them, but this is quite nice. All in green went my love riding on a great horse of gold into the silver dawn. 4 lean hounds crouched low and smiling. The merry deer ran before. Actually, that's a weird rhyming scheme. I don't like
Poems
it anymore.
like this that make me fall asleep.
Okay, alive. Does that say dead pound? Is that the poet?
Yeah.
Hey.
Well, clearly not this poet. So
No.
as in like Ezra Pound.
Oh yeah, no, it's not that one. No,
I
alive.
gathered.
Ah,
Alive.
geez.
Oh, wait.
Alive,
Jake, did you say
yay!
dead?
I said dead.
You said dead. It was
I
E.
said
Cummings.
E.E. Cummings.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh!
The one who did all like the weird formatting.
I
Am I-
think so.
Yeah, no, maybe.
Or maybe that's Shel Silverstein, or both.
No, Shel
You
Silverstein.
better have some Shel Silverstein in here so
I know,
I
it's the
stand
only
a
one we're
darn
gonna get right.
chance.
I know. Anyway.
I do not like green eggs and ham. No, that's not one.
Thank you.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Oh, that's so good. Again.
Is this a Taylor Swift song? I'm joking. I'm so joking.
Oh my gosh. Oh, they should do a collab. I mean, they can't, but if they could have. Again, you may
Yeah,
write me
whatever.
down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. Oh, we all have our answers.
Oh my God, Angela.
Maya Angelou.
I'm just gonna give the extra points to Jake. Yes, it's Maya Angelou, and she was very
Nice.
Nice.
I apologize to Maya Angelou for saying
The only reason I know that is from the Frank Wildhorn Civil War cast album. She reads that poem on that album.
Oh, cool.
Ooh,
Oh.
that's a Frank Wildhorn musical I've never even heard of.
It's actually really it's not a musical. It's a
Oh,
cantata, for lack of a better word.
I didn't know he did stuff that wasn't musicals. I approve.
It was on Broadway.
Like as a performer?
The show was.
Oh, the show was on Broadway.
Yeah.
Oh, things I don't know. See, you're teaching me so much, Jake. I adore it.
You're a good teacher, Jake.
Exactly. Next, sin of self-love possesseth all mine eye, and all my soul, and all my every part. And for this sin there is no remedy. Methinks no face so gracious is as mine.
I'm going to go with Shakespeare on this.
Yeah,
one.
I'm going. Yeah, same.
Okay.
Shakesy. Shakesy.
Shaky.
Billy Shakes.
Okay.
Milton.
Does anyone else want to venture a guess for the poet? No. Okay, so Lisa and Jeanette, you're both right. It's Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
So
Wow.
long dead.
I almost joined you in that answer, but then I said no.
Hey, you went against
Matt wouldn't do something like that to us.
We
Do
all
it
knew the Shakespeare
second
question
time.
was coming. Come on. All right.
Why can't we do poets and cheese again?
Poets and cheese. That because their names are. If only there were poets who sounded like cheese. Well,
Oh, that
So-
was a good one.
that was my favorite game.
That's my favorite game so far. Poets and composers.
I'll
or
find a way to
cheese.
bring that back. Or the clapping game. That was fun. Okay.
Oh yeah, the clapping game was good too.
This is the final question of the normal round before we go to the bonus question.
Oh boy.
Ahem. The naming of cats is a difficult matter. It isn't just one of your holiday games. You may think at first I'm as mad as a hatter when I tell you a cat must have 3 different names.
Oh, is this? Hold on. Oh, no. Well, I might be wrong because he's not a poet, but I'm going to guess it anyway because you said Mad Hatter.
Alive, and it's T.S. Eliot. That's 6 points for Jake.
Damn.
I told you it was going to be T.S. Eliot.
One of these days.
You theater practitioner should know cats. Basically, clever.
Obviously, I was going to pick the cat poem. There it is.
Obviously.
But I loved the triumphant look Jake gave as soon as I started reading the cat poem. Like, it's not just because you were guessing T.S. Eliot. You knew.
I knew.
Yeah.
I could quote it all for you, but I'll spare you.
Oh, wow.
I'm on board with that. That sounds delightful. Okay, I'm going to tally your current points. 5, 10. Okay. I heard a cat. Did I hear a cat? Jake, is your cat there?
Wasn't here.
He's in the other room.
Oh, maybe it's the ghost cat. Okay. So,
Maybe it's the pen.
Jeanette. Oh, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Or my mug. So, Jeanette, you have 17 points. Lauren, you have 18.
Ooh.
Jake, you have 21. And Lisa, you have 24.
I don't know how that happened.
I don't know how that happened. I want to recount.
21. No, wait, sorry, 20. So that's what happens when we question my authority in this classroom.
Oh.
There it is. So now you get to decide how many of these points you would like to wager. Whatever you wager will be added to your final score. The final round operates the same way. I read a piece of poetry and... Oh, wait, hold on. How do I do this? Want to do it that way? No, okay. I read a piece of poetry, and if you get alive or dead correct, then you'll double your points. If you can tell me who the person is, then you'll get 10 points because it's doubled in this round. That's my logic. Here we go. So, Jeanette, how many would you like to wager?
I will wager all of them.
That's what we like to hear. Lauren.
You know me. All in.
All in. Jake.
I feel very pressured to do all in, and I don't like that pressure. Maybe
Lisa has won by not going all in the past.
She has. For
Yeah,
She
real.
I
has,
like
yeah.
that strategy, Lisa. I'm gonna go 15.
Oh my gosh. We like this.
Ooh.
Okay. Lisa.
I'm gonna go all in. I'm feeling risky tonight.
I like that. Seize the day. Carpe
Yeah.
diem. Seize the
Oh,
fish.
yeah, carpe diem.
I just know I'm going to get it wrong and it won't matter either
I
way.
feel like I've made the suicide of carpe diem choices right now, but it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Here we go. So, again, you have to say alive or dead. And then, if you can name the poet, you get an extra 10 points. I'm going to say write down your answer and don't hold it up until I know everyone's written it, just because it's the bonus round. It matters
Yeah.
the most. Here we go. And then also write down who the poet is if you think you know.
Okay.
So that we can share all the answers all at the same time. Here we are.
Okay.
The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice.
Batman.
Yeah, okay, one more time. The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. So,
God.
hold up your hand when you have your answer written down. I guarantee this is a poem that probably almost everyone here heard or has heard
I don't think so.
at some point.
Making me question my choices. Hold on.
Yeah.
I went to public school in the South. Don't underestimate how little poetry I have heard, okay? So, just saying.
This can't be right. Wait, hold on. So,
hold on.
if they were alive in 1959,
Yeah.
can it be a trick question?
No, like they're either alive or dead in 1959.
They don't have to be a known poet. It is just a piece of poetry they have written. Right?
But like
But then how would we know what to answer?
Because my answer is not a poet, but I think he's written poetry, and this sounds like
Oh, wait,
maybe
hold on.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see
like-
what you're
Maybe they weren't alive or dead. I don't know.
No,
Like,
well,
oh my
not who
God.
I'm
Alive
thinking
or
it
dead.
is. They
Like-
were born after this?
I don't know.
Were they born after 1959?
I want a
this-
different question.
Wait, how do you not know?
No, because I think it's a person who was born after 1959.
Okay. I'm gonna say that that's a fair option, and you can make that choice as well. In addition to alive, dead, or not born yet in 59.
Well, now you just told us. Though.
No, I didn't. I think it's an
Now I
option.
have to rethink all of my answers.
I wrote Martin Luther King Jr. It's obviously not.
Okay, so
I'm just gonna
Wait,
stick
what's
with
the
mine.
first- what's the
Because
Because
first-
I know whatever it is, I'm wrong.
I
Wait,
didn't
read the
think
poem
through this
again. Read the
lesson
poem
plan.
again.
Okay. The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice.
okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right. Oh, we all got it? Okay, let's see
Well,
our answers.
yeah.
3, 2, 1. Yeah, Lisa, not born yet. It's Amanda Gorman.
Yeah,
I said
He
that. I
wasn't
said
born
that.
yet.
yeah, it was like literally last year, wasn't it? 2 years
And
ago.
she's a teenager.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it can't be. She's not even conceived or even thought of.
Yeah, I didn't think
Now.
that far ahead. I just really wanted to use that poem because I like it.
Jeez, damn.
So I kept being like, "That's Maya Angelou." I'm like, "That wouldn't have used a Maya Angelou poem again."
Wait, and Lisa, you're the one Canadian playing.
What?
You're the only.
Oh, I
Canadian
watch
playing.
American politics. What are you talking about?
I watched that broadcast. I didn't know that. I did think it was Martin Luther King
remember, like, I
Jr.
put
because
all
I
my
thought they
stuff-
had to be around that time period.
I remember
Yeah.
like I stopped working and I watched that, and I immediately started following Amanda on like all the social media platforms
Oh,
because I
she's
like
a
love
star.
that
We love her.
last line. Oh my god, yeah!
Oh, what's the last line?
Isn't
don't
the
rem-
justice one the last
no,
line?
oh, last line that I read, yes, but that's not the last line of the poem. But like, that's my
not
favorite.
the poem. You're
thing
the
that
last
she wrote.
thing you just
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I was just like, oh my gosh, you took the sounds of this word and made it mean two things that are so pertinent. I adore her. She's amazing. So yeah, so it was of course Amanda Gorman. We love her, poet laureate. I don't know if she still is, but it's a thing. And yeah, let her be president one day. I'm sure it will happen, or at the very least, she'll probably run. I can't vote for her, but I encourage all those watching to.
Unless you become an American citizen.
That's true. A lot can how well when's she allowed to run? When she's like 35? I have like
Mm-hmm.
17-ish years, I'm guessing. I don't know how old she is, but there we go. Brilliant. What do we have here? Disney Dado says, I slept in a hotel outside the Capitol for a week surrounded by tanks. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You
it
were there,
was-
Disney Dado?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a whole
Wow.
thing. I was at home biting my nails.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But no, I think like she's just the perfect example of what the movie fights for and the importance of poetry and language with young people, but just people in general. So good. So good. Anyway, there we are. Any closing thoughts either for this film or any discussion threads that we want to tie up before we wrap things up for the evening?
Just how excited I am for the rest of Robin Williams month.
Yep.
Woo!
Same. I
Cannot
will say
wait.
that this conversation with you all has like made me think more about like conformity and like what it means, and like really makes me question about like Neil's character. And like I appreciate all the discourse. So thank you. Oh, I also want to say that we kept saying committed by suicide. We should have been saying death by suicide.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my apologies on that, because I know I said that a few times. So
Learning.
no means for offense.
Oh yeah, no, that's honestly something that wasn't on my radar. And now that you say it, it should be. But now it is.
Changing the dialogue. Yep.
Right. Changing the dialogue. There it is.
See?
All right. So then I guess we'll just do a quick go around, just closing thoughts. We kind of did them already, but closing thoughts on this film, one thing that you learned from it or took away from it. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with Jeanette.
I think touching back to something we discussed, that just because a movie is kind of homogeneous, it does not discredit its worth for anybody watching it.
All right. Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I was going to come away with something, I would think the same way. But at that time, being somebody who was not white, I very much related to the film. So and I still relate to the film, and I love it.
Well said. Lisa.
My takeaway. Is that what I'm talking about? Takeaway.
Yeah, one thing that you took away from the movie.
Yeah, I would say, teaching is hard, and you're not just your main role as a teacher is not just teaching the kids and getting the best out of them, but it's standing up against the administration when they're wrong. And teachers are heroes. The really good teachers are heroes. So those are my final thoughts.
Let's get closing thoughts from a really good teacher. Jake.
Well, that's out to be determined yet. But what struck me about this conversation is that teaching is the thing in and of itself. And in that scene, when I forget who brought it up, but where whoever said that it neither saved him from being fired or helped the kids out, what actually that illuminated for me is that teaching actually won the day, because all the bad things still happened, and yet people were still reached, and the job was still done, and people's lives were still touched, regardless of how late they came to the conclusion or how bad the outcome was for some of them. That teaching is the thing we do because it reaches people fundamentally where we're at, and that's a profound thought for me.
Well said. And I agree with all of the above. That is my closing thought. So yes, so excited for the rest of Robin Williams month. But now, we're going to do the thing. I'm going to highlight you, and you're going to tell all of our lovely viewers, remind them who you are, where they can find you. And if you have anything super exciting coming up, let the world know. Let's start with Lauren.
Oh, wow. I like I said, I'm with Castles, Keeps and Clones. We do all kinds of things, unboxings and pins and Disney news, Disney reviews. We got 2 from 0 to 60s coming up this week. Today was the Jungle Book, and then Friday is the Aristocats. So I'm very excited about that, because that means next week is Robin Hood, one of my faves. And then after that, my absolute all-time favorite, The West. I can't believe I'm already in the 70s. That's weird. So come check us out on YouTube.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Lisa.
Hi. Yes. So my name is Lisa again. I am the managing producer at Cahoots Theater in Toronto, Canada. So if you are in Toronto or in the vicinity, like in the GTA, you can check out our first show back from the pandemic called 3 Ordinary Men at the Theater Center on June 14th, and it's running until the 26th of June. We have affordable tickets. So if you are wanting some in-person activity in the summertime, come and check us out. You can also follow me on my Instagram at Lisa_A_Alves to follow me and my hamsters adventures.
Love hamsters. Love Eleanor waffles. Big fan. Big fan. Thank you, Lisa. Always a pleasure. And Jeanette.
Hey, so you can find me over on Instagram at TinkerJ787. I will be in Disney starting Sunday, so you can follow along with me and my family. We're going to be riding Guardians of the Galaxy with our AP previews, so that's exciting. Once I'm back, I'll be back on We Like Theme Parks as co-host. While I'm gone, you should watch, though, because Nigel Downer is going to be on, and he's awesome. So you should watch on Tuesday. We release our episodes. And then at the end of May, I believe it's May 29th, we're going to be premiering Dole Whip Darlings on the Disnerdy Network as well. So you can find that on Instagram and on YouTube.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jeanette. Jake, same question.
So you can find me at Jake's Disney Afternoon on Instagram and YouTube. And on the channel, I've got some really cool pinholes coming up. I do some movie reviews, but from like a storytelling writer structure point of view. And so I've got a couple of those coming out this weekend and then into next week. And some fun swaps and some crafty projects that I've got going on. And this was super exciting. Thanks for having me on the show. And come check me out.
Thanks, Jake. All right. And of course, if you're watching this channel, it's my channel. Please subscribe. If you're not subscribed, why not? Press a button. Yeah. This is my channel. We're going to keep going with the Robin Williams movie marathon for the next 4 weeks. I think next week is 1 hour photo. I need to double check, but if not, that's going to happen eventually. So if you want to be creeped out by Robin Williams as like the ultimate voyeur, watch it, come here, discuss it with us. It'll be fantastic. Otherwise, I have some other fun stuff that it's going to be coming out on the channel soon. I'm going to be doing a Toronto tour inspired by Turning Red. So I'm going to be taking my Turning Red Funko Pops and just going to all the spots in Toronto that are featured in the movie. And I'm so excited for that, mostly because I'm going to try a bao bun for the first time. And I'm like, they look so good. They look so delicious. So keep an eye out for that. And please join us next week, Wednesday, same time, same channel, where we will be discussing more Robin Williams. But until then, friends, my name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and this has been the Tea Cup for One. Thank you. How do I end?